This is Sin Kisk. He's been considered a powerful character in the past couple of seasons because he has it all. Big buttons, big damage, explosive offense, and good defense. So if you're confused on why the first thing you've seen in this video is such a powerful character, it's because Sin players have always had just one teeny tiny problem with the character, despite all of these strengths. And that's this move. This is still growing. What does this move actually do? Well, depending on who you ask, well, nothing. Or not something meaningful. And that is the reason why this move was in contention for the worst move in the game. To the point that not only did a lot of Sin players talk about this move and complain about this move, but there's also a pretty good YouTube video about this move. But personally, I never thought this move was actually that bad. I mean, to be honest, I didn't think it was bad straight up. So in this video, I wanted to talk about one of the real actual worst moves in Guilty Gear Strive, but we have to figure out what move could that even be. And so to start, we have to discuss why Sin Still Growing is not actually a bad move. But Still Growing is more of a fun, old school style command taunt. This move at worst takes up a special move slot, and at best it gives Sin a random short-term effect plus a crumb of meter build since it's a special move. The buff that Sin gets depends on the food that he eats. Meat increases his damage, lobster increases his defense, fish makes him faster, ice cream gives him some meter, and lizard increases his HP by a little bit. When he pulls an item, the game rolls for how long the duration of the effect is if it's not one of the items that increases his health or defense, and then what food he gets. The game doesn't tell you the duration, unfortunately, but none of the effects actively hurt Sin. There's nothing that poisons him or anything like that, and the input, half circle back, doesn't overlap any other special moves that he really has. In matches, you'll find people either just straight up don't use the move, or they use it when they break the wall. The duration of the effect is random, but if Sin gets meter or health, you can straight up see that. I would say most of how players talk about Still Growing when they call it a bad move truly comes from like modern fighting game discourse, where competition is just sort of expected to be the default. So everything in the game is expected to have a specific meaningful use. In this context, you could say this move is not a good move. So you could say that, but I'm not saying that. So what am I going to say is a bad move in this game? I would say a good place to begin would be something that actively hurts the character for using it. For example, a few characters on launch had -11 sweeps, meaning that they were forced to cancel these attacks, and usually those cancel options were also bad. Characters like Milia, Anji, and others had this, and it was a major flaw in the character's kit on release. If you played a character with this problem, you really felt this. And the worst part about it is that it was usually on key moves in a character's kit. Take Milia for example. One of her main goals is to combo 2K into 2D into H disc. Because of her sweep and poor cancel options on launch, running up and using 2K became a huge risk because they would be able to punish the 2D. Her 2K and 2D have a gap, so someone would be able to interrupt it or backdash away much easier. Combine this with how safe other characters were on launch. A character like Leo, his 2D being -5, safe, totally safe against some characters on launch. So you could see how people would complain about some of these moves and would want them to be buffed. Them having the moves actively hurt the character. Another example would be moves that were actively forgotten by a character's player base or people who play the game in general. Previously, Bridget's Air Rock the Baby would fall into this. While I personally knew that she had a cheeky air to ground version of this move, I actually straight up forgot she had an air versus air grab, and this is the buffed version of the move. It has a purpose right now, but you can see how difficult it is to actually get this move to connect. I actually made a short about this exact move before they buffed it in the most recent patch, and when Diavone showed me this move, I was like, damn bro, I literally play this game like every day and I forgot or truly didn't know she had an air versus air version of this move. Since that move just got buffed, let's talk about one that has not gotten changed, maybe since the character came out, and this would be Baiken's 2P. Now Baiken's 5P is her famous 4-frame mash, but her 2P is actually the same speed as her 2K at 6 frames. However, it has none of the benefits. 2K has more block stun and hit stun than 2P, so it can combo into 6K pretty reliably, where her 2P has a similar problem to her 5P, where if you're not way up in their grill, or if they're not crouching, it becomes a lot harder to actually combo off the move. 2K is a kick, the K is for kick, so it has better Gatling options. You could also combo into sweep, because kicks combo into sweep, where 2P does not have this benefit. Finally, to make things worse, 2P has less range than 2K, and this range she still would not be able to combo, where 2K would be able to combo no problem. To be honest, her 2P is essentially used for some niche frame kills, and that's pretty much it. And these moves are so forgotten that the only people that are reminding people that these moves exist and need to do something are people who play the characters. Now, some player bases think moves on a character are so bad that they actually call them taunts, to a varying degree of success. If we use Sin's Still Growing, which is legitimately a taunt as the baseline, then the most well-known recent example would be something like Goldo's players calling Air Behavior Typhoon 8 air taunts, because it is a soft knockdown now. And if that's the case, then Baiken's Yozan-sen must also be an air taunt as well. Excuse me, I couldn't help myself with that one. I'm sorry. Players have jokingly called moves like Sin and Leo's Jump D, 2 slow startup dives, as air taunts as well. Despite in Leo's case, the JD actually gets used as a shimmy, and there are also older versions of some pretty powerful attacks right now, like Anji's Rin, the overhead follow-up to his fusion special move, his signature special move. That was called a taunt because of how slow it was. It was a joke how slow this move actually was. But if we want to talk about a move that is actually bad right now in the current version of Guilty Gear Strive Season 4, there is a character that I must regret to inform people who play this game a lot that we must discuss. This is Zato 1. Yep, a long-time veteran of Guilty Gear, and this character is quite interesting. So on launch and throughout Season 2 actually, he was a very popular and high-performing character. But in Season 3, this character pretty much vanished. Essentially, he got a lot of nerfs, and they buffed a lot of other characters, plus adding powerful system mechanics that he didn't use super well. I made a video about this, so if you want some details on it, you can check it out if you want. And what's interesting about Zato is, funny enough, he has a couple of moves that could qualify for one of the worst moves in the game. But there's one specific move that I want to talk about. And I think it's a really important move to talk about because of how the developers were talking about launch characters starting from Season 3. So in Season 3, this is when the game started to get like really sweaty. And one of the major goals with the developers was to give a new special move to all of the launch roster of Guilty Gear Strive. This means 15 new special moves. And the devs started with 6 characters on the launch of Season 3. Mei's Split, Faust's Item Eat, Anji's Mirare, Ino's Mad Love Agitato, I hope I say that right, I always think I say that wrong. They call it MLA for short. Giovanna's Chave, and Ramothal's Rock. We just call it Rock. I know it has an actual name, we call it Rock. Now, the pattern with these new moves is that they do one of two things, and it has been repeated with all special moves they've added since the launch of Season 3. They either fix a major flaw in the character's game plan, or if the developers look at a character and they go, this character doesn't really have like an actual big problem right now, the new move does something to expand on the character's toolkit or how they play. So an example of fixing a flaw would be Anji. Anji has 2 main mechanics, and one of the really big ones is his spin. Now, while it looks like this move might not do anything, if someone swings into this move, they'll be stunned, and if he spins successfully, Anji will be able to counter. This is also reflected in how meh his neutral tools are besides this move. So his far slash is actually pretty great, but it's slow, so he's not that good at with punishing. Then he has 2S, which is a great counter poke, but it lacks the range that far slash has. 5H is legitimately amazing, but it's mostly amazing here when the opponent's back is to the wall, because of how good it is at catching jump outs. And 2H, before the current patch, was a pretty niche move in general. Forgotten, if you will. So, Anji can use spin to threaten his opponents, and then take his opponent's hesitation in neutral and turn it around to swing into fusion and then do a mix-up. This sounds really good, right? The problem was, spin has a lot of counterplay. So for starters, you could use a big jab and recover before Anji could actually do anything to you. And if a character had something like a strong projectile, they could use that to swing into spin instead, which would also deal with other approach options. So this is where Midare, his new move, helps. Wait, what's that? You don't see a new move here? This is Midare, a follow-up to spin. This move is so fast that it will hit a jab no problem. And if for some reason the opponent blocks it, which is usually what would happen if you swung a projectile into the spin, then Anji was plus with a guard crush. Now, guard crush itself is a pretty controversial mechanic in this game. And let me say, I was really early to this one, and I'm very glad that many other people play this game agree with me now. Guard crush does a lot of things. But for the sake of talking about Anji's Midare, and honestly most applications of guard crush in the game in general, in the vast majority of cases it is used to remove throw protection, turning strike or throw into a straight 50-50 coin flip. Normally the game has 5 frames of throw protection. So when you exit, hit stun or block stun, or when you get up from an attack, you cannot be thrown for 5 frames. And to avoid this type of thing from happening, every character has at least one attack that is 5 frames to use to escape a tight strike throw setup. So the opponent has to leave a crumb of room in order to try to throw you, which introduces some layers between the two players. On a guard crush attack, however, this throw protection does not exist, so even if you press as fast as possible, you will still get punished and thrown. With Anji, the guard crush was accentuated by having a special rule on his close slash. Anji's close slash is actually 7 frame active, which she's the only character in the game that has this. So you can neither do a reversal throw to this move, nor can you do a reversal backdash to it. It's very, very difficult to do this to him. And these would normally be potential outs in this type of situation. So this made Midare a very powerful tool, and this fixed a major flaw in his kit, and players felt this. Midare was considered to be the best, or tied for the best, new move on Season 3's launch, and opinions of Anji's strength went up and up since that time. Truly a started from the bottom, now we're here type character. So going back to Zato, what move could I possibly discuss with him? It's this move, right here. This is Float, and players call this move Zabubu. Eddie is a cute little fella in this game, right? So this move makes Eddie float around Zato. When Eddie is floating, you could negative edge and he'll throw Eddie at a certain angle depending on what button you press. So the P version will just drop Eddie wherever Zato is. And this is the fastest way to get Eddie back to his normal state. The K version often sends Eddie the furthest away, and usually this results in an immediate sandwich between Eddie and Zato. The S version launches him at a bit of a tighter angle. And finally, the H version launches Eddie at about a 45-degree angle. They might look all of the same range here, but when he's a little bit further away, and when you look at Eddie specifically, you can really see the difference in how he throws Eddie at you. Now, before we talk about what this move adds for Zato, we have to look at what Zato typically does in a match. So generally, the Zato flow in a match goes something like this. So first, Zato is going to want to navigate to a place where he can set up Eddie safely, usually be at close to full screen, but sometimes here, outside of normal's range, is good too. Then he will pick a move according to the situation. So if he thinks the opponent is trying to rush him down, but is a bit too far, he can use a pose. Oppose absorbs attacks, slows the opponents down, and lets Zato counter into combos. Now, if he thinks the opponent is going to wait, he can either do a fast poke with Pierce, or he could try to clear the ground space with Drills. If he thinks the opponent is going to try to jump into the air, he could try to use Leap to force the opponent down and create an advantageous situation. Now, all of these actions take place from Zato's immediate position, or somewhat nearby if he chooses to summon Eddie first, as he can summon Eddie and then do an attack, or do a motion input and do these actions. You can even see it from the shadow that extends. It's not like his shadow, like it is his shadow, but it's like Eddie. It's lore stuff. Zato also has the ability to push Eddie at you using Drunkard Chain. And this is a pretty common tactic at all skill levels, but especially beginner Zatos. It can be hit by attacks, but depending how they set it up, it can actually be pretty difficult to deal with. So someone might say something like, a flaw Zato actually has is he has to send Eddie at you. So you can use Float to help with that, giving him new angles to set up offense with Eddie. Others might say Zato has a pretty big suite of flexible tools, and Float is here to give him a new way of playing the neutral game with Eddie. Now, both would be true, but I think I would lean towards the latter on this one. But this is where the flaw comes in. So for starters, like on the ground, you could hit Eddie during Float, no problem. And this is fine. It's the same as Drunkard Shade. The problem actually is that Eddie is not actionable for a long time when you choose to not drop him immediately. So this game is a 60 frame per second game, like basically every competitive fighting game. And at best, Eddie is actionable after 48 frames on the H version. And this would be trying to do something as fast as possible. And at worst, actionable after 58 frames. Another problem is Eddie doesn't even have any air attacks, and the move itself does not have a hitbox while it's being thrown at you. So when Zato summons Eddie on the ground, it's actually pretty fast. And you can actually use Eddie not doing anything as a threat, because when you release a button, he just does something. But when you do Float, Eddie's just kind of out there in space. And then finally, unlike Sin Still Growing, you can actually get this move by accident in spots you don't want. And this is because of how Guilty Gear Strive's input buffer works. So the input buffer is here to make moves more lenient and easier to come out. The buffer holds your input for X amount of frames. The larger the buffer, the longer it holds your inputs. But I would say many players agree there's definitely a too long here. But there's also a too short, and there's a just right. The most extreme is probably something like Smash Ultimate's buffer. Lots of classic games, Guilty Gear XX, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Super Turbo, all have 0 frame buffers. And at least in like 2D fighters and old 2D fighters, this is why those games had negative edge in the first place. It was the original buffer. It was a way to get special moves out easier. You can think of it as like an extra chance for a special move to come out. Now, Guilty Gear Strive's buffer normally is 5 frames. But the thing is, the game has a separate input buffer just for special moves, and it's different for each special move and super in the game. Input, not literally different special moves have different buffers. My bad. So the way that this works is that each input in a special move is checked in during the motion, like in steps, and the game will accept any other input during this window as long as all the steps to the move are performed. So in order to make this digestible, let's use Zato's Float as an example. This move's on 214p, and 236 and 214 is the same thing. They're both quarter circles. So step 1 of the 214 motion here is the 2. And the window for this being accepted for your float is until the end of time. And I'm being dead ass here. I'm being very serious. You can hold this down for 10 seconds, 10 minutes, 10 hours, 10 years, and do 14p, and the float will come out. I held it probably for, I don't know, like 15 or 20 seconds, and it still happened. I could hold it all week, it'll still happen. The second step of the 214 would be the 1. So once you go from 2 to 1, the game will only check for 5 frames, whether or not the 4 input is there for the 214. So if I do 2, 1, 4p, I'm just gonna get jabbed. See how I like wait here and then do it? Nothing. But if I go quickly, I'll get the float. Now after that, once you hit the 4, the game checks for 9 frames whether or not you hit punch, the last step of the motion. So again, if I take too long, nothing. But I could delay very slightly here and still get the move. So you could do it fast, or you could do it slow and still get this move. Essentially, you could say, not counting cosmic time of the game checking the 2 in your motion, that this is, I believe, a 24 frame input buffer for 214. Or you can look at it as the motion plus 9 frames for the punch. Up to you, to be honest. Because of how this input buffer works, you can even do really wonky inputs to get this. So if you look at the virtual controller here, you can even do something weird like the game treats this as this. As long as the steps go through, it's all good. So the thing is, with this input, with Zato's fast smash being on punch, a situation can happen on defense where you're blocking, you're trying to pick what to do, you're switching between blocking and dashing, and you know, you just happen to do this by accident where you want to actually do an attack. Now, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but this definitely happened to me during my all characters adventure run playing Zato. It happens to people who actually play the character. It happens every now and then, and every now and then is still too much for this to occur. To be honest, Zato technically has maybe 2 normals that could also fall into potential worst move in the game, but I would actually say they fall into the forgotten bucket, which we will save for another video. For float, at best you could use it as a cute taunt, and at worst you could die for using it. I do think it's kind of cool that it seems that this move is inspired by a bug he had in season 1 where you can make Eddie go in the air. But as it is right now, this could be the worst move in the game. Let me know what you guys think though. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I do have a Patreon where I have a free membership where I just post fighting game tips every week, and I have a paid membership where you can get like new videos and progress on what I'm working on, and honestly whatever I feel like putting out, unique videos every week. I stream Monday through Fridays on Twitch at twitch.tv/LordKnight, or if you don't like that, I am also streaming on YouTube, which you could just watch here, which would be great. And I would appreciate if you subscribed too. That would be awesome. If you want any coaching for fighting games, but especially Guilty Gear Strive, I do that over at metafy.gg/LordKnight. And while we stream, we record videos for my second channel, LordKnight Chronicles. That's where we do reactions and talk about fighting games and the future in general. Once again, like and subscribe if you guys feel like it. And I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.